Welcome back. I'm Nolan Stoltz, the composer of the Route 66 Suite, and this is part 2 of a series of videos about all that's inspiring the AD 1926 movement. In part 1, we started in Chicago at the corner of Jackson and Michigan, because that's where Route 66 westbound began in 1926. We took you on original 66 all the way to downtown Bloomington, Illinois, and then left off here on Oakland Avenue. Today it's one-way traffic, but back then it would have been two-way. These older homes and these older brick buildings really give the feeling and the flavor of early Route 66. As we travel down Morris Avenue, on the right we come to Parkview Inn, a restaurant that dates back to 1928. So it's not 1926, but it's, close enough to mention here. I do have a little video that I made about it after having lunch there once. This little stretch of abandoned 66 is an unnamed road these days, and because it sits among the trees, it's images like these that are inspiring the music for the Among the Trees movement. And of course, this was the road in 1926, so also AD 1926. One of the things I found most striking about the 1926 version of Route 66 is how close it follows the railroad tracks and how often one sees trains. So the sounds of a train are a part of the early Route 66 experience. And to get a feel of Atlanta in 1926, I booked a night at the Cola House. This place dates back to 1893. I have a separate video about this, but I figured I'd give you a little taste anyway. I mean, it's got this cool old phone, and I tried to put myself in 1926 by listening to a baseball game on the radio. Of course, this is AM only, and when's the last time you've seen kilocycles listed on a radio, right? Atlanta, Illinois is a small town, but it did have this old hotel, so 66 traveler may have stayed there even though it was a block off of 66. Musically speaking, Atlanta had a Philharmonic Orchestra in 1903. There was a concert band. This is taken in front of the library, and this old performance space, so some inspiration for the show will go on as well. Coming into Lincoln, the original 66 took this path here, but only for the first couple of years. The road here is pretty poor condition, and it's not named, and it's not even marked. We'll have to detour around to the 1928 to 1940s version of Route 66 and then come back to the original 66 right here. coming up on that 1928 to 40s version of Route 66 I just mentioned. And we're going to turn right on it. This is Kickapoo Street, and this was the original road, so this is 1926 to the 1940s. For the first couple of years, Route 66 crossed the railroad tracks here, but as you can see, it is now blocked off. Let's back up and head back to Kickapoo. Even though Route 66 went straight after 1928, it's very likely that a 1926 traveler would have went into this business district. For instance, on the left, there's a little Mexican restaurant called Rio Grande these days. Who knows, maybe there was a restaurant in that space at that time. Most importantly, these buildings existed in 1926, so it's a part of the AD 1926 inspiration I'm looking for. For example, the Lincoln Theater dates back to 1922. Now, I have a separate video all about this. The show will go on in Lincoln. Coming back to where 66 originally crossed the railroad tracks, again we see heavy train traffic. This is pretty common with this 1926 version of Route 66. So we'll cross over those tracks and take a left on Sangamon Street. This was the path of original 66. They ended up having 66 cross the tracks a block south on Broadway, so this is where the later 66 came in from the left. Down that street is the old Lincoln House Hotel, so this is where an old 66 traveler might have stayed. The top few floors were removed and all that's left is this bottom floor. And to the right down Broadway is the old Grand Theater. This is where a 1926 traveler would have gotten their entertainment, there or the Lincoln Theater. All these brick buildings and the railroad tracks right there, they really give the feeling of a 1926 version of Route 66. Original 66 makes a slight left curve onto 5th Street, and once you leave the downtown area, there isn't many buildings from 1926, but there is this one exception that I want to share. It's a garage and gas station dating back to 1925 at 5th and Washington. This is where we need to turn left. These days, it's the Route 66 Corner Garage Antiques and Collectibles, so one of my 26 gas stations, and inspiration for AD 1926 as well. This picture ended up in the paper in Dwight. We'll continue down original 66 on Cobblestone Ave. This is on the southwest end of Lincoln. Notice the road closed sign. A bridge is out ahead, and you can see why we'll have to continue by foot in a minute. So we'll detour around and resume on 1050 Ave. Next, we'll head into Elkhart on Original 66, now an unnamed road. With nature slowly reclaiming Original 66, there is a connection between the AD 1926 movement and the Among the Trees movement. The road in front of us, that's the later Route 66. So we're going to cross it and continue on Original 66. Next up is Williamsville. Again, we have a fairly narrow road for a highway, right? And on our right, there's this old gas station. I don't know the date, but I have a separate video where I drive up to it and the bell rings. It's pretty cool. But as we continue westbound or south here, we go along the railroad tracks, and again we get that connection to the railroad that one has on that 1926 version of 66. The next town we'll get to taking Original 66 no longer exists. It's the ghost town of Selbytown, Illinois. I have a separate video. It's like a 17-minute video. Takes you around. I did a bunch of research on the place. So look up episode 27. It's titled A Tour of Another Forgotten Route 66 Ghost Town, Selbytown, Illinois. After Selbytown is Sherman, and then south of there is this original bit of 66, no longer accessible. Original 66 then turned right onto what is now Chinchilla Lane, then turns left onto Sand Hill Road. Unfortunately, you can no longer drive onto Sand Hill Road as it is gated off. It's now a parking lot for a school that's inside the old Sand Hill School, dating back to 1916. So another building that would have existed in 1926. So hope you enjoyed this little drive from Bloomington to Springfield. Stay tuned and we'll continue down the road. For the other videos, subscribe at patreon.com/Route66Suite.